Apparently, millennia ago, humanity lost their home system. Maybe lost is the wrong word. You see, humanity, like most species, had quirks. One of their unusual habits, which led to the loss, was a tendency to name colonies or systems after existing settlements. This led to around 400 systems with names varying on the Sol system. Give a few hundred generations of people who have never even been to Terra, or learned about it beyond its existence as their cradle world. Their most famous quirk was their penchant for self-destructive tendencies, up to and including genocide against their own species. It was amidst one of these periods of mass violence committed by humans against humans that the realization was made. They didn't know where Terra was. This troubled the multiple fractured human governments enough for them to stop fighting, for the first time in nearly 400 cycles. It is said that you could see the far side of human space clearly for the first time in millennia. Now I think it may be important to state that many species lose their cradle world eventually. Some even give it up by choice, preferring to live in the darkness of deep space, safe, far away from the violent tendencies of the stellar titans from which their spark of life was ignited. Eventually, however, those same titans that gave life snuff it out, sometimes exploding into great nebulae of gas from which new stars can begin the cycle anew, other times collapsing into a singularity, preventing life from arising there ever again. Humanity, however, had another quirk: theism, the belief in a so-called higher power. Now they had moved past prayer to humanoid figures at this point, but had great respect for celestial bodies. Believing that each planet, moon, star, singularity, and every large object in the galaxy contains power. The exact details of the beliefs are vague, and indeed history points to these details being the very cause of the aforementioned genocide. Yes, despite how outrageous two beings of the same species fighting to the death, and worse, in the name of a being they have no proof of the existence of sounds, humanity were experts. Regardless of the different beliefs of the individual factions of humanity, there was one system held in reverence above all: their cradle system. Sol, Terra, Mars, Venus, Titan, the floating cities of Jupiter and Saturn. The 6 greatest achievements of mankind, jewels of technological innovation and human ingenuity. The results of millions of cycles of dedicated terraforming, rejuvenation, civil engineering, and the installation of the first Templum Dyson. A vast network of solar satellites captured the sun's energy and fed it back into itself, sustaining the star, whilst in the process siphoning enough energy to power the great city planets in the system. And it had vanished. This is the United Confederacy of Allied Terrans broadcasting into the dark. Sol, are you out there? The single message came from human space, one centicycle after the guns had fallen silent. Broadcast with such power, across all channels, all frequencies. Blinding flashes in varying sequences transmitted in an ancient human language called Morse code. They even used the combined gravitational pull of the entire Terran fleet, activating and deactivating their FTL drives to send the message in binary, across the material or space-time itself. It was initially believed they had finally wiped themselves out. But alas, the galaxy stood in awe. Never in the history of Terran interaction with the galaxy at large had humanity united as one. And so far, never have they since. The combined might of the Terran fleet was enough to literally rattle the entire galaxy just by starting their engines. There was no way any race could stand against them. It would be like trying to stop a tsunami with a fence held up by children. Such was the comparable might of the respective forces. The silence, once the broadcast had been complete, was even more deafening than before. As trillions of beings waited for the reply that would either save them or doom them. We are here. Help. The reply came from a completely unexpected place. On the far side of the galactic plane from Terran space, a battered and dying Sol used some of its remaining energy to cough a short response to the broadcast. There was a cough only when compared to the almighty cry it responded to. In seconds, the Terran fleet had disregarded all safe warp procedures and headed at full speed for the source of the transmission. The jump signature was so large, it is believed to have caused the nectar-temporal distortion, which is still there to this day. The Terran fleet tore across space with a complete disregard for anything in their way. Any said ships, stations, meteors, or small celestial bodies who did not heed the brief warning to clear 400 kilometers squared around broadcast flight path were simply swatted aside by the massive weaponry and shields of the great Terran battle carriers. In total, the entire Allied Terran fleet, totaling around 640,000 battlecraft, of varying size and design, stretched over 20,000 kilometers as the faster ships drew ahead in the rush to find Sol. 73 planetary bodies were wiped out en route, mostly uninhabited, with many being drone mining operations or small research stations, unable to move out of the way of the fleet in time. Now, this is where the story gets really interesting. See, humanity never developed the technology to transport their own star, or so they say. But at some point during 400 cycles of warfare, an entire solar system vanished and reappeared on the other side of the galaxy. When the Allied fleet arrived, Sol, their star, was dying. The Templum Dyson had been desecrated, and was now spitting the star's lifeblood clearly into the void. It was barely holding on to its mass. As it expanded, Mercury's Sol Castellum, the fortress world of the Sol system, had been consumed already. They had blazed a trail through the stars, and found their god wounded. For some time it was believed they had all simply died off. They had lost Sol and simply given up. How the galaxy must have wished they had known. For nearly 200 cycles no one heard from humanity. When they returned, they did so with vengeance in their hearts. The still unexplained absence of Sol had resulted in the loss of trillions of humans. Venus, Mars, and Titan had been abandoned. The great floating cities had fallen to be crushed by the gas giants that hosted them. They took their time, found out who was to blame, and began to build anew. The silence ended with another great transmission, as loud as the first. The Yarkoii are deemed guilty of the desecration of Terra and her pantheon. Sol, Unigenitus, demands justice. All who defy the might of Sol will be decimated. The Yarkoii were an extragalactic species and had fled an enemy in their home galaxy. The Terrans said the Yarkoii had bargained with their enemies. They hadn't escaped them. They had led them to new territory. They blamed this new threat for the disappearance of their world, and the desecration of their temples and gods. All of this broadcast as a data packet, alongside the original message. The Yarkoii didn't even have the chance to put up a fight. Occupying 4 systems on the edge of galactic space, they fell one after the other. The final system only being able to broadcast a single image, the only image of Sol Unigenitus ever seen by any non-Terrans. The single still frame, shot from one of the last battlecruisers, as it spans out of control, falling into the gravity well of the local star, shows something that should have been impossible. A star, bigger than that of the Yarkoii system, floating above the orbital plane of the system, surrounded by a great web of satellites. Sol itself had walked into the system, the satellite network of the Templum Dyson spinning rapidly against the rotation of the star, each satellite appearing to be brimming with weaponry, with the telltale blue flicker of shielding deflecting the currents of the violent deity they bound. Behind and above the star, the great planetary bodies of Sol arched away in the darkness, looking like the arm of the vengeful sun. And from this arm of glittering planets came hell itself. Great gouts of plasma, which tore into Yarkoii ships like their shields and bulkheads had been made of tissue paper. The frames showed the cracked red desert of Mars Altador had been peeled further back, revealing the eye of glowing green energy from colossal laser installation, nearly 1,000 kilometers across. Even Venus Hortus, the meticulous Eden world of humanity, carefully engineered to support lifeforms from all periods of Terran history, pour forth violence in the form of great, hulking bioengineered monstrosities, which were aimed at the Yarkoii planets and unleashed. From the Terramator came the largest ships ever seen, so large they were originally mistaken as small moons the Terrans had hurled at the Yarkoii. These were surrounded by a great debris field, which was later revealed to be the escort fleet, made up of thousands of massive battleships and carriers, each in turn swarmed by a blurry fuzz of fighter craft. The transmissions went dead after this image was received, and the Yarkoii are now extinct. In the aftermath, the galaxy would have united against humanity. Such was their horror of what Terran's vengeance looked like. But for the Terran's next action, they disappeared. This time the whole species just vanished. For years, many people assumed that they had wiped themselves out in their final battle. That was until the light from the nearest galactic cluster reached us. Great flashes of light, followed by the extinguishing of stars. At the time, the distance made it impossible to tell what was happening. Near 1,000 cycles had passed since humanity had vanished, and they had been almost forgotten. Even if it was the humans, the stories must have been exaggerated. It would take millions of cycles and would be practically impossible to invade and destroy an entire galaxy. We were safe. The Zealots had abandoned our galaxy in search of those who would desecrate their gods, and they would die out in the depths of space. Or so the story goes. 12 hours ago, the last star in the galaxy of Andromeda was extinguished. The entire galaxy had been reduced to an entropic state. It has been 3,400 years since the first star flashed out of existence. 9 hours ago, we picked up a massive gravitational signal moving towards us at an incredible speed, along with the following transmission. The heathens are burned, their gods consumed. Sol Unigenitus stands undefeated. Eternitas in Terra Mater. Humanity is coming home.